What's going on, everybody? This is Robo from All Bark, and today I'm back with another video. Today we're going to be doing 2023 NBA draft grades for all 30 teams, as we're going to include some undrafted free agents. I'm basically going to be giving you guys my grades on how a team picked and how I think they fit with a team, as well as the value of that pick. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get right into it. Starting off with the San Antonio Spurs, I'm going to go ahead and give them an A+. I mean, they got the most generational prospect in the class in Victor Wembanyama with #1. That was a no-brainer. Pretty much an auto A or A+ when you have a pick like that. But I also really like their second-round pick in City Sissoko. I think they got him a bit later than he was projected. So pick 44 with City Sissoko, great value, and I think he could be a solid part of their future if they can able to develop him pretty well.
The Spurs was a nice counter.
Golden State Warriors. A few years
Look at that.
back.
Bring the double team. Oh my.
Next, we're going to go with the Charlotte Hornets, who picked second, and they took Brandon Miller over Scoot Henderson. I'm going to give him an A-. I do like the Miller pick. I think Scoot was the correct pick here, but I do like the fit, and I think Brandon Miller was arguably in that same tier with Scoot. I don't think it's as bad as some people are saying. I also really like their pick of Nick Smith at 27, which was big-time value, as I had him as a 16th best player in this draft. And then they also picked up James Nagy with pick 31, which was solid value, right around where he was supposed to go. And I really like the Amari Bailey pick later in the second round. I also like their undrafted free agents, Serge Jabari Rice and Charles Bediako. I think they're high-impact players in Summer League that could eventually earn a two-way spot.
65% on unguarded threes. Miller takes it straight.
You know, in terms of the value to one team. Wow. Okay.
Florida set a ball screen. Oh, that's a good play. Miller takes it strong.
Next is the Portland Trailblazers, who I'm going to go ahead and give them an A. The Scoot Henderson pick at 3 was absolutely fantastic. I think they were just dreaming that he would fall there. I would be interested to see if they end up trading him or Damian Lillard this offseason. I don't know if they're going to keep both, so we'll see how that changes. The Chris Murray pick, I think that was right around the range he was going to be drafted. I think it's a solid pick for somebody if they're trying to win immediately. I think he can impact that right away. And then Ryan Rupert, I think, was a big-time potential pick for their future. If they do decide to trade Dame, they could give him more minutes and to see if they can develop him into something playable.
Verhoeven just had it ripped away from him. Murray and
Corey, that's not fair. It isn't. That's not fair. I like this matchup. Scoot Henderson, one-on-one. Yeah.
Next, in picking 4th was the Rockets, who I'm giving an A+. They absolutely crushed this draft in terms of value. They got Amen Thompson, who is probably the 4th best player in this class, arguably 3rd for some people. And then Cam Whitmore falling all the way down to 20. I honestly thought they would trade up to pick 10 to possibly take him after he kept sliding. But, I mean, every pick was just not Cam Whitmore, and I think they just fell right into his lap at 20. It's a no-brainer for them there. They almost took him at 4, I believe. So getting 2 potential top 5 prospects in this draft with pick 4 and pick 20 is just huge value. It's an absolutely A+ draft. One of the top 3 drafts in this class for sure.
Taking a lot of shots here today.
Next is Detroit Pistons, who took Asar Thompson 5th and Marcus Sasser 25th. I'm going to give them a B+ for this draft. I do think there's a chance it could be an A-. It really depends on what they plan to do with Marcus Sasser. I was really high on Marcus Sasser. To be honest, I wanted to rank him higher than I did at 25, but they picked him right at 25, which is the exact range I had him, and then Asar I had 5th or 6th, and that's the same spot he did there. They have good value with their picks, and they really needed defense and shooting, which is what they got out of Asar Thompson and Marcus Sasser. They definitely improved as a team here, so I'll give them a B+, and I do think there's potential that this could be an A- draft.
Oh, are you serious? What? Into Asar!
so far this game.
About 8 of them in the first quarter.
Next is the Orlando Magic, who picked 6th and 11th. I'm going to give them a C+ for their picks of Anthony Black and Jet Howard. I do think they're both high potential prospects, but I don't know if they were the right value with each pick. I think Jet Howard may have been available a bit later, and I just don't know if he's the right pick over Grady Dick. But I do think they do have solid potential, so I'll give them a C+ here. It wasn't the worst draft, but it definitely wasn't the best. We will see, though, as both guys could definitely develop into big playmakers for them.
For the Razorbacks. Black is open off that baseline. Into Sanogo.
Standing, averaging over 15 points a game. Oh, what a move there.
Next is the Indiana Pacers, who I'm giving an A-. Jarris Walker is a home run pick for them, I think. He fell right into their lap. He fits their system perfectly at the 4. And then Ben Shepherd's a solid pick. I do think I have him a bit lower than this pick, but there were some rumors that he could have been a first-round pick for some other teams, so it's not horrible value there at all. I think he's a high-impact guy who can come to the 2 or 3 right away. And then they drafted Isaiah Wong, 55th, who I think that's right around the range he should have gone. So overall, it was a solid draft for the Pacers. I'll go ahead and give them an A-.
Walker. He's going to take the 3.
Next are the Wizards, who I'm going to give one of the worst grades in this draft at a D+. I kind of think they just got finessed a bit with that 7th and 8th pick. I don't really think the Pacers were going to take Coulibaly. They gave up a few second-round picks to take him 8th, which I still think was a bit of a reach, although I have heard that the Jazz were heavily interested in Bilal Coulibaly at 9. So I guess they really did go up and get their guy. He does have high potential, though, and they're entering a rebuilding situation, so it's not a bad pick. I wasn't a big fan of their second round pick either with Tristan Vukcevic. I just don't know how much of a great player he's going to be for them. I almost think they kind of just wasted that pick. But I do like their trade of trading 57 for Patrick Baldwin Jr. with the Warriors. I do think that's a guy who has some high potential upside for them in a rebuild. And 57 is just not a value pick at all. So I think that's definitely a steal for them. Overall, it's going to be in that C- D+ range. Next is the Utah Jazz, who really crushed this draft. I'm going to give them an A. Taylor Hendricks at pick 9 is solid value. I really love the Keontae George pick at 16, and Bryce Sensabaugh was big-time value at 28. I was really surprised to hear a lot of things about him slipping down in this draft. I think he was a top 20 guy for sure, but getting him at 28th is just great value. The Jazz knocked this draft out of the park. They got 3 great players, and I'll be really interested to see how all 3 of them fit in the rotation this next coming season. I think all 3 are going to play pretty much right away.
Almost had it taken away by Smith. D3. Wow.
Really athletic 6'6" wing. George.
Next is the Oklahoma City Thunder, who traded up for pick 10 by taking on the Davis Bertans contract. I like that deal. They moved up 2 spots just to take on a contract that's a 1-year deal. Cason Wallace is a solid fit for them. He's not going to start most likely because they have 3 solid guards already. But Cason Wallace is definitely an elite defensive prospect who can shoot the 3 and fits in as their 6th man pretty much right away. He can come in and help them off the bench big time and maybe even develop into a starting role down the line. Playing alongside Shea and Giddey, it's going to be very hard to stop this guard rotation with the Thunder. I also really like the Keontae Johnson pick. I think that was a solid pick in that range. He's got a tremendous story and I really like his upside, so that's a solid pick in the 2nd round there. They also picked up Adam Flagler and Caleb McConnell as UDFAs. I really like the Flagler pickup. He was somebody who was just outside my top 60. Overall, the Thunder had a great draft. Go ahead and give them an A-. Next is the Dallas Mavericks, who picked Derek Lively 12th after that trade down. Olivier Maxence Prosper at 24, and then signed Mike Miles and Jelly Walker at undrafted free agency. I like their draft. I'm going to give them a B. I think the only reason I'm not giving a higher grade for this is just because I didn't really think Derek Lively was a lottery guy in this class. I think he was expected to go lottery, so it's not a bad value pick. Just not really that high onto Derek Lively's offensive game. But, however, with this pick, it's not a bad pick because all they really need him to be is a shot blocker and an athlete to be able to catch some lobs from Luka and Kyrie. Max Prosper is a guy I could definitely see developing into like a Dorian Finney-Smith for them. So I think the Mavericks definitely had a solid draft. I don't think it was a great one, but I don't think it was a bad one by any means at all. I'll go ahead and give them a B. Next is the Toronto Raptors, who picked Grady Dick with the 13th pick. This is pretty much right around the range I expected him to go, was in that 11 to 14 range. I think he definitely was a lottery guy. I'm going to give the Raptors a B+ for this pick, as they also signed Marquise Noel in undrafted free agency. I don't expect him to stick there, but I could see him as a 2-way guy just because of his incredible tournament run he had. He definitely deserved this opportunity. And the Raptors really did need some shooting along that wing. We'll go ahead and see what their plans are for their future, but I think Grady Dick is a guy that definitely could make an impact there, so I'll give them a B+, as I said.
Dick from way deep. Got another! Holy cow!
Next is New Orleans Pelicans, so I'm going to give a B2 for their Jordan Hawkins pick. I do really like their undrafted free agency pickup of Landers Nolly. I thought he was a guy that probably should have been drafted in that 2nd round. Jordan Hawkins was solid value there at 14. I think he probably would have been there a bit later, but if the Pelicans really didn't feel like moving, they just wanted their guy at 14, didn't want to risk it. It's a solid area to get their guy. I think he's the best shooter in this draft for sure, and the Pelicans, that's an area where they really want to continue to improve. With him and Trey Murphy, it's going to be very hard to stop them on the perimeter. Hawkins has just incredible off-ball ability who can play alongside CJ McCollum, Trey Murphy, Ingram, and Zion very well. I think it was a solid pick. Not a great pick, but not a bad pick at all. I'll go ahead and give him a flat B.
And we got 5 minutes to go for the title. Here's Hawkins. That's huge.
Next is the Atlanta Hawks, who I really was between a B+ and an A- for. I went ahead and gave them an A- just because I personally was higher on Kobe Buffkin. I thought he was a top 11, top 12 prospect in this draft, and they got him with pick 15, and I really like the Seth Lundy pick as well. I think he's another wing who can provide some two-way ability with a great jump shot. I think both of these guys can impact their team right away. Buffkin's going to be their go-to guy off the bench at the guard spot. And I think a Hawks team that's kind of stuck in limbo here, they did a pretty good job of improving their team through this draft.
Buffkin will lay it up. Wow. Struggled the 2 games before that. Buffkin. Pure.
Next is the Lakers, who picked 17th and 40th. I'm giving them an A+ for their draft. I was a big fan of their draft. Jalen Hood-Schifino is somebody I had ranked 14th, so I think that's solid value there at 17. And Max Lewis is a guy I was very high on. I had him as the 22nd ranked player, and they got him all the way down at 40. I had heard a lot of things that he would fall, but I know there was some interest for some teams in the 1st round. I'm pretty shocked he fell all the way down to 40, and it's just an absolute steal for the Lakers there. I also think they're killing the undrafted free agency signings with Colin Castleton, Alex Fudge, and Demoy Hodge. All three of those guys are guys that I think can have a pretty good impact in the Summer League. I would not be surprised to see the Lakers make a run in the Summer League tournament, as I think they've got a solid group of guys in this draft and undrafted free agency. Once again, an A+ for me.
Got it. Good Shafito behind the back. Plays it on. Oh my goodness.
Touch there from Maxwell Lewis. Lewis, step back.
Next is the Miami Heat, who I'm going to give a C grade to. I don't think it's a bad pick, but I think the value-wise, they definitely could have gone with somebody else, or if they wanted Jaquez, they could have moved down a bit for him. I didn't have Jaquez as a first-round prospect, but he was very close to that. He's a solid player who's going to make an impact right away for them, which is what they're looking for. But 18th pick, I just didn't think was the right value for Jaquez. I do like their undrafted pickup of Taylor Funk. I think he's a guy that could have been drafted for sure. But overall, I think it was a kind of below-average draft for the Heat. I'm going to give them a C here. I just don't think this was really the right pick here.
About that before, JB. He plays with a lot of effort, but he's got great.
Next is the Golden State Warriors, who I'm going to give an A- to. I think the Podziemski pick was a solid upside pick for a team that absolutely can develop him. They've shown that they develop guards extremely well in the past. I think Podziemski has a great opportunity to become their next Jordan Poole level player, and I think the Trace Jackson Davis pick at 57 was tremendous value. He's a guy who I think could have been a first-round talent. He was around that range in the mid-30s for me, and getting him all the way at 57 is a big-time value pick. Overall, I think the Warriors did a really good job in this draft. I'm going to give them an A-.
And Podziemski takes the 3.
Next is the Brooklyn Nets, who I'm giving a B+ to there for the draft. They drafted Noah Clowney with the 21st pick and Dariq Whitehead with the 22nd pick, as well as Jalen Wilson with the 51st pick. All three of these picks fit right in with where I had them on the value board. Noah Clowney is a high upside young guy who can fit in well next to Nick Claxton and Mikal Bridges, and I really like the Dariq Whitehead pick. I think pre-injury, he's a big-time steal in this range. He was a projected top 10 pick before any of this. And Jalen Wilson's just a guy who just gets it done. He's a proven winner. I think is a great draft for the Nets. Once again, I'm giving them a B+.
Here's Wilson, top player. They all leave him in one love. It's to win basketball games. That's what KJ Williams is trying to do.
Next is the Kings, who drafted Colby Jones with the 34th pick and Jalen Slauson with the 54th pick, and then signed Justin Mutz from Virginia Tech in undrafted free agency. I'm going to give them a B+ for this grade. I think they had good value at both picks. Colby Jones is somebody I thought could have gone in the first round, and Jalen Slauson is somebody I thought could have gone a bit higher in the second round than he is. Both of them are high-impact college players who could fit into the rotation pretty quickly. I think they got solid shooting and solid playmaking in this draft, and overall the Kings got exactly what they needed out of this draft, so once again it's a B+.
Turnover of the day either way. Jones, who had the hot hand.
Produce. Foster, make it fly.
Next is the Denver Nuggets, who I really thought were going to crush this draft after their first pick. I'm a big fan of Julian Strawther for them, but their second round just didn't do it for me. I'm not very high at all on Jalen Pickett and Hunter Tyson. I do know they were both projected to potentially be picked in the second round, but they just didn't do it for me. I don't really know how they fit in. I think maybe they're really trying to replace that Bruce Brown level player with Jalen Pickett, and I can tell they're really aiming for the low ceiling, high floor guys who can make an impact and help them win championships. It wasn't an awful draft, and I really do like the Strawther pick, but I'm going to give them a C for this draft.
State program very close because of good Heath coach.
Next is the Clippers, who I'm giving a C+ to. The Kobe Brown pick was solid. I didn't think he was supposed to be a first round pick at all, but you have to get your guy at that range, and Kobe Brown is a solid player who's going to produce for them. The Jordan Miller pick is also an interesting one. I think that was right around the range he was supposed to go. The Clippers definitely had a solid draft. Not a great one, not a bad one. They're really in that middle range. I'm going to give them a C+. Next is the Minnesota Timberwolves, who traded up into the second round to get Leonard Miller. I think this was a big-time steal for them with the 33rd pick. He was definitely a guy I could have thought gone in the teens and 20s of this draft. I think he fits in with them perfectly at that small forward spot. I see him with a high ceiling fitting in there in their rotation pretty quickly. I also like their Jalen Clark pick. That was pretty much a perfect spot for him. All around, it was a really solid draft for the Wolves. I'm going to give them an A-.
Undefeated, 9-0. Beautiful.
Next is the Chicago Bulls, who traded into that 35th spot for Julian Phillips. I didn't like this pick at all. I think he's a guy that has solid upside, but he's really a low-level offensive player. Defensively is really where you can get the value, and I think the Bulls just really did improve as a team with this pick. I do really like the Sanogo UDFA signing. I think he's a really solid player and has the potential to be a solid two-way guy, but overall, I just don't think the Bulls had a great draft. I'm going to give them a C- for that Phillips pick.
Elevated. Play in the transition.
Next is the Milwaukee Bucks, who I'm going to give a C+ to. The Andre Jackson pick was really just an average pick. I think he's a guy they definitely could develop. He's a great winning player, but there's not really much outside of that. I don't see a lot of upside with him. And then Chris Livingston, I'm not really sure why he entered this draft. I definitely think he should have stayed at Kentucky. But the Bucks are definitely a team who's proven they can develop guys. I also really like their undrafted free agent signings with Amari Moore, Drew Timme, and Jazz Gortman from Overtime Elite. Overall, it was an okay draft, not a great one. I'll give them a C+ because it definitely wasn't bad at all.
Wow. Ware turns him over. Wallace shares it. Here's Livingston.
Next is the Boston Celtics, who drafted Jordan Walsh 38th and Mohamed Gay 39th. I was really interested to see what the Celtics were going to do in this draft as they traded into the 25th pick, but it just seemed like trade after trade after trade was happening, and they ended up having pick 38 and 39. They did pick up a bunch of second-round pick assets later in draft, so it was a good move for them to do this, and I do think they got two guys who can impact their team. Walsh is somebody who can impact their team right away defensively, and Mohamed Gay is a high-upside big man for them. So I think the Celtics had a pretty solid draft. I'll give them a B+. I think it was just a solid overall draft for them. Next is the Memphis Grizzlies, who had an incredible pick and then a really puzzling one. The G.G. Jackson pick is a super high upside player who, honestly, if he went to North Carolina, he could have been a top 10 pick. If he didn't reclassify, he absolutely could have been the top 5 of next draft. It was a poor decision, but once again, you're drafting the upside with the Grizzlies. You don't need him to impact your team right away. I think he's a guy who could eventually develop into a very solid player for them. However, the 56th pick just seemed like the Grizzlies didn't know what to do with it and didn't really want to use a roster spot. And they took somebody I don't think anybody's really ever heard of. I think they kind of just threw that pick away. It was pretty puzzling. I think they could have tried to sell the pick. And if they couldn't, I think they should have taken somebody they could have used on a two-way rather than somebody who's a draft and stash. So for that being, I'm going to go ahead and give them a B+. The GG pick really carries that rating here. I think if it was only GG, I would have given them an A. Next is the Cleveland Cavaliers, who only had the 49th pick in this draft. They drafted Emoni Bates with it. I think it's super high potential. He was the former #1 player in the class before he reclassified and went to Memphis. A lot of poor decisions from him and his camp over the past few years, but overall, the Cavs are definitely a team I can see developing him. He's got great shot-making ability, and they really don't need his defense with the versatility they have with other players. I'm going to give them a B- for that pick. I also really like their Craig Porter and Wendell Green signings. Craig Porter is somebody who I think could definitely earn a two-way for the Cavs and be a solid player for them in the future. It's really hard to grade the Suns draft as they only had pick 52. I was really hoping they drafted somebody who could give them high impact right away because they really need some depth. They drafted Toumani Camara. I think it's a solid pick, not a great one. I'm going to give them a C for this. They also signed Marcus Carr and Grant Sherfield in undrafted free agency. I feel like the Suns could have drafted somebody better in this spot, but it really wasn't a horrible pick. They're not going to get anything lower than a C, but nothing better as well, so that's just an area where I think they have to sit. The last two teams didn't have picks in this draft. Starting off with the 76ers, I'm giving them an A for their undrafted signings. I think they grabbed Travion Smith, who I had as a potential first-round pick. I think there was no way you could have him any lower than like 40th or 50th on your board, and they get him straight up out of undrafted free agency. It's almost like they had an early second-round pick for free. And then I also really like the Ricky Council and Azuolas Tubelis additions. I think all three of those guys are going to be solid players for them. I think at least two of them make their roster as they really just need some depth. Travion Smith is a really interesting pick, though. I think if they can develop him, they may have something special in him. I'm going to give them an A for their undrafted free agency signings. Although they didn't have any picks in this draft, it seems like they did.
Tubelis, he'll step out.
Lastly is the New York Knicks, who also didn't have any draft picks. I'm giving them a C for their undrafted free agency signings of Jacob Toppin, Obi's brother, and Jalen Martin from Overtime Elite. I think both these guys are solid players who I think could have been drafted. I didn't expect it, though. But once again, just because they didn't have any draft picks, I can't give them anything higher than a C or C+. I'm giving them a C for these signings because I don't think they were bad at all. I think these guys definitely could be a potential two-way option for them. Alright, that's going to be it for my draft grades, everybody. Go ahead and let me know what you think of how I graded your team's draft. I really want to know who you guys think had the best draft. Maybe give me a top 3 of your favorite classes. And I'd also love to know which player you're most excited to see, as well as potential Rookie of the Year picks. So go ahead and give this video a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Don't forget to leave me a comment, and thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. Peace.